The phantom limb was a cruel joke. Michael, a retired Marine, felt it ache in the space where his left leg used to be. It was a constant reminder of the war that had taken so much from him, leaving him to navigate a world that had forgotten its heroes. His life was now defined by a tiny, third-floor apartment and the boundless love of his 8-year-old daughter, Emily. Today was Emily's birthday, and he was staring at his wallet. A worn $20 bill and a few crumpled ones. He counted it again. Exactly $200. It was his last hope for giving her a day she deserved. He put on his prosthetic and stepped out. The city's indifferent rush, a stark contrast to his silent desperation. He rounded a corner and saw it. A small, weathered house on Maple Street. It looked like something from a forgotten era, with peeling paint and a wraparound porch. Nailed to a wooden post was a hand-painted sign. For sale. $200. Michael felt a surge of disbelief. It had to be a typo. As he approached the porch, an old woman with a face full of wrinkles and eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets looked up at him. "You look like you've been searching for something," she said, her voice soft like rustling leaves. "The sign, is that price real?" Michael asked, his voice a little hoarse. She nodded, a knowing smile on her lips. She took his money, her hand surprisingly firm. "The price is real," she said, handing him a key. Then she leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper that sent a chill down his spine. "But this house isn't for you. It's for your daughter." Later that day, Michael watched Emily's face light up with pure joy as she saw the house. "A real house, Dad?" she squealed, hugging him tight. "This is the best birthday ever?" Inside, the house felt strangely warm and welcoming. It was clean, and though simple, it felt like home. Michael ran his hand along the wall and felt a loose panel. He pried it open to find a small, rusty metal box. Inside, there was nothing but a single yellowed photograph. It was an old black and white picture from what looked like 50 years ago, and in it was a little girl with a face identical to Emily's. Michael's blood ran cold. He flipped the picture over. Written on the back in elegant looping script were 5 chilling words. "Michael's daughter. Live in this house." Michael's heart hammered against his ribs. He looked from the faded photograph in his hand to Emily, who was already running her fingers along the smooth wooden banister, her laughter echoing through the empty rooms. The disconnect was a terrifying jolt. The little girl in the picture, frozen in time 50 years ago, looked like a twin to his daughter. The inscription on the back wasn't a coincidence. It was a command, a prophecy. He carefully placed the photo back in the antique box and ran his hand along the bottom. His fingers caught on a loose piece of felt. He peeled it back, revealing a small, leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age. Michael's hands trembled as he opened it. The first entry was dated July 15, 1975. The handwriting was neat and careful, belonging to a child. The name signed at the bottom of the first entry was Lily. Lily, the name of the girl in the photograph. He flipped through the pages, a chilling story unfolding before his eyes. Lily wrote about her father, a soldier named Michael who came home from a different war, with a limp instead of a prosthetic. She wrote about the strange dreams she had after moving into the house, dreams of a glowing light and shadows that whispered her name. The house, she wrote, wasn't just a home. It was a doorway. Michael's eyes scanned the final entries, his breath catching in his throat. Lily, now a teenager, wrote of her father's fear and the old woman who lived nearby. "The lady says the house is a promise. It's a place for a Michael's daughter to keep the light safe, but the shadows will come again. They always do." The last entry was dated August 18, 1975. It read, "He is here, the man with no eyes. He wants the house. Papa says we must go. We must protect the light, but the old woman says we have to stay and wait until the next Michael's daughter arrives." The journal ended there. The name Michael's daughter burned in his mind. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a pattern, a generational curse. And the old woman who had sold him the house, she wasn't just a random stranger. She was the very same old woman Lily had written about, the guardian of the house's terrifying secret. As he closed the journal, the air in the room grew cold. A soft breeze, though all the windows were closed, snuffed out the small birthday candle he had lit on the floor. A shadow, darker than the evening light outside, flickered in the hallway. It didn't move like a shadow from the setting sun. It moved with purpose, stretching and twisting towards Emily. Michael's heart stopped. He wasn't just a father who had found a home. He was a pawn in a game a half-century old, and the man with no eyes was coming back. Michael's paternal instincts, honed in the chaos of combat, took over instantly. He lunged forward, scooping Emily into his arms, his heart a drum against his ribs. The shadow, a creeping void in the warm, lit room, didn't have eyes, but it felt like it was staring right at his daughter. It stretched, twisting into a vaguely humanoid shape. Its darkness not a lack of light, but a hungry, consuming entity. A bone-chilling whisper, a sound like dry leaves rustling in an empty room, seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. It was a language he couldn't understand, but its intent was clear. It wanted Emily. Suddenly, a hidden symbol on the wall, a series of interconnected geometric patterns, began to glow with a soft, otherworldly light. Emily, safe in Michael's arms, was mesmerized. She reached out a small hand, her fingers tracing the glowing lines. As her touch connected, the light flared, blindingly bright for a brief, beautiful moment. The shadow recoiled with an audible hiss, a sound of grinding stone and tearing fabric. It was pushed back, dissolving into the very walls from which it had come, leaving behind only a bitter scent of decay and an unnatural cold. The light faded, and in its place, a crack appeared in the plaster where the symbol had glowed. Michael set Emily down, his body trembling with adrenaline. He reached into the fissure and pulled out a small, rolled-up piece of parchment, tied with a thin, brittle ribbon. It was a note, and the handwriting was the same as the journal's, only more urgent. Michael, it read, you are not her protector. You are her guardian. The house is a vessel for the light within your daughter. The shadows seek to snuff it out and claim the power for themselves. He will return. He always does. Prepare her. The cryptic words of the old woman echoed in his mind. This house isn't for you. It's for your daughter. He had thought she meant it was a new home, a safe haven. Now he understood. The house wasn't a gift. It was a burden, a legacy passed down through generations of a specific bloodline. His daughter was the key, the next link in a chain stretching back decades. He looked at Emily, now playing with a strand of her hair, completely oblivious to the war that had just unfolded around her. The fear was gone, replaced by a grim determination. He was a Marine. He knew how to fight. But this wasn't a war with rifles and grenades. This was a war for his daughter's soul. A fight against an enemy he couldn't see, in a house that was both his greatest gift and his most terrifying prison. He didn't know what the light was or what the shadows wanted, but he would learn. He had to. Michael didn't sleep that night. He sat in the living room, the leather journal and the note from the old woman spread out on the floor. His military training, which had prepared him for combat, offered no guidance for fighting supernatural shadows. He was a guardian now, a word that felt heavier than any gear he'd ever worn. He had to understand. He had to learn how to prepare Emily. As dawn broke, Emily woke up, completely unaware of the terror that had visited their new home. She skipped over to Michael, a crayon clutched in her hand. Look, Dad, she said, holding up a drawing. It was a picture of the house, but in the center a dark, spindly figure stood on the porch. The figure had no eyes, just two empty black holes. Michael's blood ran cold. He recognized the creature from the shadow. Emily had seen it too. He went back to the journal, his hands shaking. He reread every entry, looking for anything he might have missed. On the final tattered page, a strange diagram was drawn, a simple schematic of the house's floor plan. Michael compared it to the layout of the living room, and a specific section of the wall, where the glowing symbol had appeared, was marked with a tiny faded X. He pressed on the spot, and with a quiet click, a section of the plaster popped inward. Behind it was a small hidden space. Inside, wrapped in a brittle piece of cloth, was an old tarnished key. It was unlike any key he had ever seen, intricately carved with the same geometric patterns as the symbol on the wall. He also found a final note from the old woman. The key opens the vault, it read. The vault holds the final piece. The shadows will come for the light. Go to the city, Michael. Go to the library on 14th Street. Find the vault and learn what you must. The time is now. Michael looked from the key to the drawing in his hand, a sense of grim clarity settling over him. The house wasn't just a hideout. It was a starting point. He had to leave the one place he was told to protect, and venture out to find the answers that would save his daughter. The man with no eyes was coming for them, and for the first time in a long time, Michael knew exactly what he had to do. The city was a battlefield, and for Michael, the urban jungle felt more treacherous than any war zone. He left the house, the small, tarnished key in his pocket, feeling like a lead weight. Every shadow seemed to be watching him. Every gust of wind seemed to whisper his name. The prosthetic leg felt heavy with each step, a constant reminder of his vulnerability. The library on 14th Street was a sprawling, Gothic building, its stone facade covered in a network of ivy. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of aged paper and hushed secrets. Michael walked with purpose, his eyes scanning the endless rows of books, looking for a sign. He found it on a shelf dedicated to local history, an old, dusty leather book with a symbol on the spine that matched the one from the wall in his new house. He ran his hand along the spine and found a hidden catch. A section of the bookshelf slid open, revealing a small hidden room. The air was colder here, and in the center of the room sat a single ornate pedestal. He placed the key in the lock, and with a series of quiet clicks, the pedestal opened. Inside was a collection of scrolls and a single, breathtaking object, a small, glass orb that pulsed with a warm golden light. This was it. The light Lily had written about. He unrolled the main scroll, his eyes scanning the ancient script. He learned the truth. The light was a remnant of a benevolent cosmic consciousness, and the house was a nexus, a point where its power was strongest. The man with no eyes was not just a shadow. He was a being known as the Collector, a primal entity that sought to consume all sources of power. The Michael's daughter prophecy wasn't a curse, but a bloodline of guardians, tasked with protecting the light from the Collector every 50 years. Sarah, the old woman who sold him the house, had been the last guardian, but she knew the fight was never truly over. You found it. Michael's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway was a woman in a librarian's uniform, but her eyes held a cold, predatory gleam. He knew you would come, Guardian. The house can't save you now. He wants the key and the girl. A deep rumble vibrated through the floorboards. The lights in the library flickered, then died, plunging them into darkness. Michael grabbed the glowing orb and the scrolls. He could feel the shadows returning, but this time, they weren't just a threat to his daughter. They were a threat to him. He was the target. He had the light. He was no longer just a father trying to save his child. He was in a race against an ancient evil, a race to get back to his daughter before the Collector found them both. The fate of the light and his daughter's life rested on him. The library plunged into darkness, and in the silence, Michael heard the telltale hiss of the encroaching shadows. The librarian, her face a mask of cold fury, stepped forward. The Collector will have the light. Give me the key, and perhaps you'll be allowed to die quickly. Michael didn't hesitate. He clutched the golden orb in one hand and the scrolls in the other. He used his military training, turning the library into a battlefield. He knocked over a row of shelves, their thundering crash a temporary distraction. The librarian lunged, but he sidestepped, his prosthetic leg giving him an unexpected anchor. He shoved a heavy wooden table into her path, buying himself a few precious seconds. He fought his way out, bursting into the cool night air. He ran, the golden orb pulsing with light in his hand, a beacon in the darkness. The shadows followed, slithering along the buildings, a silent, menacing tide. He made it back to the house on Maple Street, just as the first tendrils of darkness began to creep up the lawn. Inside, the house was eerily silent. Emily was standing in the living room, a quiet courage on her face. The Collector, a towering form of coalesced shadow with two empty, gaping sockets where his eyes should have been, stood before her. The girl, a voice, a sound like gravel on glass, echoed from the Collector. The light belongs to me. Michael shoved the orb into Emily's hands. It pulsed, a warm, reassuring glow. Emily, he said, his voice firm, remember your drawing. This house is ours. Make it remember. The glowing symbol on the wall reappeared. Emily looked at the symbol, then at the Collector. She closed her eyes, and a wave of pure golden energy surged from her. The house responded to her will. The floorboards groaned, the walls creaked, and the air crackled with a powerful force. The Collector, for the first time, seemed to hesitate. The light was not just energy. It was a force of creation that repelled his consuming darkness. He was a predator, but the house was now a fortress, and Emily was its queen. With a final, inhuman shriek, the Collector was pulled backward. His shadowy form stretched and torn as the very fabric of the house's temporal. Nexus banished him. He was not defeated, but exiled back into the void. The house settled, The light in the orb faded to a soft, gentle pulse. Michael sank to his knees, his body exhausted but his spirit triumphant. He looked at Emily, no longer a little girl, but a young guardian who had just won a war he couldn't even comprehend. The mystery of the $200 house was solved. It wasn't a cheap sale, but a sacred trust, a generational duty. Michael took Emily's hand, and together they stood in their new home. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was a guardian, and his greatest mission had just begun.